Enough with dressing up the problem. A 49ers defense that finished dead last in the league in sacks cannot go into another season living off names, hope, and a clean-looking jersey. Santa Clara needs answers, and it starts with Mykel Williams becoming more than just a promise. Then comes the question that puts real pressure on the front office. If Kyle Van Noy wants this fight, why ignore it? And Brandon Aiyuk is still burning bridges while Mike Evans already has George Kittle sounding like a fan who cannot believe what he is watching. Hit the like button and ride with me, because today we are bringing serious pressure. Mykel Williams is exactly the type of player who splits the fan base between patience and pressure. Everybody knew he was not coming in as a finished product. The 49ers drafted a huge, powerful athlete with rare physical tools, but also limited pass rush technique. That was never a secret. The problem is, in San Francisco, a project cannot become a permanent excuse. When a franchise takes a defender in the first round, it is telling the locker room, the fan base, and the entire NFC that body has to turn into impact. And year one did not give them that. 20 tackles, 1 sack in 9 games, then the knee injury cut the season short before any real growth could fully show up. Against the run, he did bring value. He held the point of attack, played with strength, and did not look physically out of place. But what the 49ers needed to see, that spark hunting the quarterback, that threat that changes protection, never showed up at the level people expected. And when the whole defense finishes with sack production that low, nobody gets a free pass in the evaluation. But this is where the read starts to change. Maybe the issue was not only Mykel. Maybe the usage was too limited for the type of player he is. According to PFF, he lined up outside the tackle on 62% of his snaps. San Francisco treated Mykel mostly like a wide edge, attacking from the outside and trying to beat tackles in space. That does not feel like the most punishing way to use his physical profile. Williams has the size and power to bother guards. He can be the kind of defender who moves around, kicks inside in certain fronts, attacks the B-gap, holds up against the run, and forces offensive lines to change their communication. That is where Raheem Morris becomes so important. Morris does not have to view Mykel as only a traditional 4-3 defensive end. He can mix fronts, change the picture, and put the kid in spots where his body becomes a real advantage. The Zach Harrison example in Atlanta matters for exactly that reason. Harrison, with a similar physical profile, was used in a more varied role under Morris, splitting snaps between the B-gap, head up over the tackle, and outside. The result? 5 sacks on only 114 pass rush reps and a 78 pass rush grade from PFF. That does not guarantee an automatic breakout for Mykel, but it does show the map. And that is what the 49ers have to stop wasting, the map. You cannot ask for a second-year leap and then run back the same formula that failed to create production. If Williams is healthy and Morris gets aggressive with how he uses him, this player can stop being nice potential and become a real problem for offenses. But the demand is simple, enough waiting for talent to explain itself. In Santa Clara, a first-rounder has to grow fast, especially on a defense that needs to scare quarterbacks again, not just talk about physical identity. If the conversation is pass rush, nobody gets to act like everything is fixed by simply waiting for injured players to return and young players to jump. The 49ers finished with 20 sacks, the worst number in the NFL. That is embarrassing for a franchise that built so much of its modern identity on pressure, chaos, uncomfortable quarterbacks, and a defensive line that made people nervous. Nick Bosa tore his ACL. Mykel Williams also had his season cut short by an ACL, and yes, that matters a lot. But a contender cannot look at a wound that big and say, let's just hope it heals by itself. San Francisco already made moves. They traded for Osa Odigizua. They drafted Romello Height in the 3rd round and Grayson Halton in the 4th. That tells you the front office got the message. But getting the message is not the same thing as finishing the job. Because if Bosa comes back, if Mykel comes back, if Osa fits, great. But what about the rotation? What about 3rd down? What about the veteran who comes in fresh, understands protections, wins with detail, and turns a defensive series into a punt? That is why Kyle Van Noy cannot be treated like some random name floating around. Christopher Knox from Bleacher Report called the 49ers an ideal fit for him among available veteran defenders. The logic is simple. Van Noy became a productive rotational edge in Baltimore, with 23.5 sacks and 54 pressures over the last 3 seasons. We are not talking about a savior. We are not talking about a player who has to carry the defense by himself. We are talking about an adult, useful, proven piece who knows exactly how to attack a specific role. There is more. Van Noy already opened the door himself. He said he would love to play with Fred Warner, called Fred his little brother, and made it clear he sees something cooking in San Francisco. That matters. A veteran player does not talk like that by accident when he is looking at possibilities. He did not say the 49ers have contacted him, so this stays in the opportunity lane. But opportunity still has to be attacked when it matches a need. The question inside Santa Clara should be aggressive. What does it cost to turn a loud weakness into a more serious rotation? The 49ers do not just need names coming back. They need ammo. They need waves of pressure. They need a plan that does not collapse if one body fails again. Van Noy may not be a massive headline, but he could be the kind of move a mature team makes before desperation gets to the door. Then the temperature changes completely because Brandon Aiyuk has turned into a saga that feels bigger than contract frustration or wanting a fresh start. He is still on the 49ers roster, still stuck inside the reality of the contract, still unable to force San Francisco to move on his timeline. And to say it straight, that is not bad luck. That is consequence. Aiyuk tried to use public noise as leverage. He criticized the team, criticized John Lynch, criticized his former agent, criticized the NFLPA, appeared in videos, and made it clear he would like to go to Washington, where he has a connection with Jaden Daniels, and where Adam Peters knows the 49ers structure well. But public pressure does not always create a market. Sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes it makes other teams look at the talent and ask, "Great player, but what kind of problem comes with him?" Andrew Brandt, a former NFL executive, was harsh on that point. On the Ross Tucker podcast, he basically questioned whether the Commanders would really want to step into that mess after watching Aiyuk attack so many people on the way out. And that question lands because it is not only about ability. Aiyuk can play. Nobody serious erases what he has already done in San Francisco. The point is different. When a player tries to leave by setting his own house on fire, any possible new locker room starts calculating the risk. And I am going to defend the 49ers here with zero apology. San Francisco has no reason to kneel for an unhappy player if the market is not offering real value. According to Brandt, the 49ers do not owe Aiyuk money until September, so they can wait, keep him on the roster, and see if any offer shows up. That might annoy people who want the drama solved in 5 minutes, but big franchises do not manage expensive assets on impulse. Washington can watch. Washington can wait. Washington may even like the idea of pairing Aiyuk with Jaden Daniels at some point. But while he is under contract, there is no public move that solves this equation. And the more Aiyuk tries to speed things up through exposure, the more he may be lowering his own leverage. Brandt even suggested that if he does leave, it might be in a low-risk situation, a 1-year veteran minimum deal, or maybe a trade for a future conditional 7th-round pick. That would be a brutal fall for a receiver at that level. So I want to see the Niners war room in the comments. Would you still try to rebuild the bridge with Aiyuk if his posture changed? Or has this relationship already crossed the line? Because my read is cold and aggressive at the same time. The talent is still there, but the 49ers cannot allow noise to become command. Santa Clara controls the clock here. That is exactly why Mike Evans' arrival changes the air inside the building. After all that energy spent on noise, videos, frustration, and trying to force a scenario, a Hall of Fame veteran walks in, works, produces, impresses, and has George Kittle sounding like he still cannot believe what he is seeing. The contrast is wild. On one side, a receiver trying to get out through volume. On the other, a model of consistency stepping into Santa Clara and raising the standard just by the way he practices. Kittle did not sound like he was giving some polite off-season compliment. He said every single day he sees Mike Evans and thinks, "Wow, Mike Evans is here." Coming from George Kittle, that carries weight. Kittle has shared an offense with big-time players. He has lived through deep playoff runs. He knows what a winning locker room needs to carry. When he says Evans is the first legit veteran wide receiver he has had on the roster since Emmanuel Sanders in 2019, in his opinion, that is not a small line. That is a message about experience, presence, and respect. The 49ers needed that kind of adult in the room. Not adult only as in age, competitive adult. A player who steps onto the practice field and shows everybody how an elite pro prepares his body, attacks the ball, demands detail, and treats every rep like it has consequences. Kittle pointed right at that. Evans takes football incredibly seriously, and that sets the tone for the wide receiver room. That type of impact does not only show up in the final stat sheet, it shows up when Ricky Pearsall is watching. It shows up when Brock Purdy realizes he has a bigger window on contested throws. It shows up when the defense has to practice against a body that does not forgive bad positioning. And yes, the practice production gets your attention. According to the ESPN piece Kittle referenced, Evans scored somewhere around 3 to 5 touchdowns in one day. Nobody should hand out trophies in OTAs. But nobody has to pretend not to notice when a veteran that big shows up and immediately looks different. Mike Evans did not come here to decorate the resume. He came to change the geometry. He forces bigger corners to fight at the catch point. He gives Purdy an answer when the play breaks down. He makes safeties think twice before crashing down on Kittle or the run game. With Evans and Pearsall leading that room, with Kittle working back from the Achilles injury and not expected to miss much more time, the 49ers offense has a real chance to become heavier, more mature, and more dangerous. But the pressure stays. Big names are not enough. Pretty practices are not enough. This roster was built to hurt defenses on real Sundays. If Evans brings that same authority Kittle is seeing now into January, the NFC West needs to start treating San Francisco like a serious problem again. In the end, this whole episode screams one thing. The 49ers are not in some innocent testing phase. Mykel has to turn into production. Morris has to use that talent better. And the front office has to look at Kyle Van Noy as a possible solution, not disposable noise. Aiyuk? Huge talent, but Santa Clara cannot hand control to drama. And Mike Evans is showing the other side of the coin. Professionalism, impact, and hunger to win right now. That is the difference between drama and standard. If you want to follow this daily chase for the Niners' next move, subscribe to 49ers Express, drop your comment, and come back for the next video.